Hi folks, HR Funk here, out on the range with number 22 in my series on Law Enforcement Qualification Course Challenge videos. Now if you've been following this series, you know that I'm attempting to fire a law enforcement firearms qualification course from each of the 50 states for the purpose of comparing and contrasting those courses and ultimately determining what I think is the best law enforcement firearms qualification course in the country. This series does concentrate on duty handguns, and today's duty handgun course comes to us from the state of California. Now, I was somewhat surprised to learn that California is one of those states that does not have a statewide mandated law enforcement firearms qualification course that agencies in that state are required to use to qualify their officers. Rather, the state allows individual agencies or departments to develop their own qualification course. So this course was supplied to me by a large agency from California. As in the past, I'm not going to identify exactly which agency it is, but this course is divided into 10 different tasks that are required by the shooter undergoing qualification, and the shooter has to complete each of those tasks properly in order to pass the course. Now, the scoring on this course is a little bit different than what we've seen in some other courses in this series. The tasks that are required for the shooter are broken down into basically elements, and the shooter has to meet certain elements while completing that task. And each one of the different stages of the course, or I should say each one of the different tasks, has its own accuracy standard. So for example, when we look at the target back here, ideally all of the shooter's shots will be fired into this white area. But there is some allowance built into some of the tasks. For example, the course description might say that in that particular stage, or for that particular task, the shooter is allowed to get 2 shots in the gray and 1 in the black, meaning if the shots wander out of the white, as long as 2 of them are in the gray and 1 is in the black, that's acceptable for completing that task. Obviously, if all the shooter's shots are in the white area, then that's certainly acceptable for that task. Now, in order for me to be able to show you that I am completing each stage and meeting the accuracy standards for that stage or that task, what I'll do, if I have any shots in any of these stages outside of the white area, between those stages or between those tasks, I'll come up and cover those shots, and we'll take a look at the target after I complete each task to make sure that I meet the accuracy requirement for that particular task. Then I'll move on to the next stage. This course requires the shooter to fire a total of 50 rounds while completing each of the 10 tasks, and those tasks take place at distances as close as 2 yards from the target and as far away as 15 yards from the target. Now let's meet today's challenger. And today's challenger is an old friend. This is my M&P40 1.0 that I carried for 7 years while working for my former police department. And if you're wondering why I chose this pistol for this particular course, the reason is because the agency that provided the course issues this very pistol. So I thought it seemed appropriate to use my old duty pistol while shooting my way through their course. So in just a few minutes, I'm going to get things set up and ready to go, and we'll see how my old duty pistol does against this current California law enforcement handgun qualification course. And here we go, folks. The first task required by this California qualification course takes place at a distance of 5 yards from the target. And due to the complexity of some of the instructions for these tasks, what I'm going to do is read them right from the course description rather than try to paraphrase them the way I usually do. For task number 1, which is labeled a malfunction drill, the instructions state that the magazine for this drill is to be loaded with 3 live rounds on the bottom, 2 dummy rounds, and 2 live rounds on top. The shooter will be given the grip command. At the sound of the timer, the shooter will have 20 seconds to get 5 hits anywhere within the target. The shooter shall pull the trigger on each dummy round and get a click instead of a bang prior to performing each malfunction drill. Now, one of the things that this specifies is something we have not seen before, and that is a grip command, and that repeats itself several times in these instructions. And I had to get some clarification on that to find out exactly what the grip command meant. And what it means is the shooter is allowed to start with the shooting hand already on the firearm and all of the retention devices of the holster already released. so that when the signal to fire comes, all the shooter has to do is draw and start to complete the task. Also, you'll notice in this that the shots can hit anywhere on the target, so it doesn't even matter what color of the area on the target the shots land in, they just have to be somewhere on there. Now, one thing I'm going to have to simulate is the malfunctions themselves. I don't have currently any 40 Smith&Wesson dummy cartridges, so I'm going to simulate those. The instructions, as you heard, do require the shooter to squeeze the trigger each time. I'm just not going to squeeze the trigger. I'll come up, simulate squeezing the trigger, and then I'll perform the malfunction clearing drill and do that twice in a row before I fire out the last 3 shots required by this task. And the first task is completed. All the shots are in the white. They were all fired within 10.8 seconds. So now it's time to move on to task number 2. Task number 2 also takes place at a distance of 5 yards from the target. And this one is titled Draw and Tactical Reload. On this one, the shooter will begin standing at a position of advantage, holding a simulated sight book. I'm going to use my iPad cover as my simulated citation book. At the sound of the timer, the shooter has 5 seconds to get 3 hits anywhere on the target. So again, anywhere on the target, doesn't matter what color it is, these 3 shots will count. The shooter then has to reload to a fresh magazine, and then the instructions go on to talk about performing a second reload where the shooter demonstrates a tactical reload, or what we here in Ohio call a reload with retention. I think what I'm going to do to simplify this just a little bit is, after firing my 3 shots, since the reload is not contained within that 5-second time limit, is I'll just perform my tactical reload at that point to demonstrate it, and then we'll move on from here to the next task. And those 3 shots were fired in 3.4 seconds. They're all in the white, and the tactical reload was completed. So now it's time to move on to the next task. And it's on to the next task, which is actually task number 4, and it is titled CQB for Close Quarter Battle. Task number 4 takes place at a distance of 2 yards from the target, and in this one, the shooter is again given the grip command. At the sound of the timer, the shooter has 2 seconds to get 3 hits on the target. This time, a minimum of those 3 shots have to be at least in the gray area of the target, and one of them can be in the black. If any or all of them are in the white, that's even better. Those 3 shots were off in 1.26 seconds. They're all in the white, so on we go. Stage 5 is titled Support Hand Only, Kneeling. In this stage, the shooter will begin standing at the 5-yard line and execute a support hand only draw. The pistol will then be set on the 4-yard line. The shooter may set up near the pistol and nearly kneeling, but shall not be kneeling nor touching the pistol. At the sound of the timer, the shooter has 5 seconds to grab the pistol in a support hand, get into a kneeling position, and fire 3 rounds on the target. This time, there's a requirement that at least 2 of the shots are in the gray and 1 can be in the black. And again, if 1 or more of those shots are in the white, that's fantastic. Shots were fired in 4.11 seconds, and they're still all staying in the white. The next task is fired at a distance of 7 yards from the target, and this is a primary hand or dominant hand only drill. The shooter will be given the grip command. At the sound of the timer, the shooter has 3 seconds to get 3 hits on target. A minimum of 2 of those hits have to be in the gray area of the target, and 1 can be in the black. All rounds are fired with the primary hand only, and once firing is complete, the shooter shall perform a primary hand only reload. Now the reload is not part of the 5-second time limit, just the 3 shots that are fired are part of that. Well, that was not exactly the greatest primary hand only reload that I've ever executed in my life, but I managed to fumble my way through it. The good news is all of those shots were fired within 2.36 seconds. They're all still in the white, and now it's time to move on to task number 7. And task number 7, appropriately enough, is fired at a distance of 7 yards from the target. And task number 7 is a reloading drill. The shooter will be given the grip command. At the sound of the timer, the shooter has 10 seconds to fire through a 3-round magazine, perform an out-of-battery reload, and fire through another 3-round magazine for a total of 6 rounds. The hit standard is a minimum of 4 hits within the gray area and 2 within the black, and again, if they all stay in the white, even better. .94 seconds, shots are all still in the white. Time to move on to task number 8. For task number 8, I'm going to be firing from a kneeling position behind cover. The shooter will begin primary hand supported, kneeling behind cover and finger off the trigger. At the sound of the timer, the shooter has 4 seconds to lean out to the primary side and fire 3 rounds at the target. The shooter will reload to a 3-round magazine and reset behind cover. At the sound of the timer, the shooter has 4 seconds to lean out to the support side and fire 3 rounds at the target. The minimum hit standard is 4 within the gray and 2 within the black. The first 3 were in 3.85 seconds, the second 3 were in 3.44 seconds, and they're all still in the white. Task number 9 also requires the shooter to fire from a position of cover. In this task, the shooter will begin primary hand supported, standing behind cover and finger off the trigger. At the sound of the timer, the shooter has 2.5 seconds to lean out to the primary side of cover and fire 1 round. After resetting behind cover, the shooter will repeat the primary side for a second round. The shooter will then reset behind cover, and at the sound of the timer, the shooter will have 2.5 seconds to lean out from the support side and fire 1 round. The hit standard is all 3 rounds anywhere on the target, so we're not worried about white, gray, or black this time. Anywhere on the target is fine for this stage. Oh, and I finally had a couple leak out of the white that time. I had one in the gray and one in the black, but as I said at the beginning, the hit standard is anywhere on the target. That qualifies as anywhere on the target, so those are both good shots. And now it's on to the 10th and final stage. Final task, folks, and this one also takes place at a distance of 15 yards from the target. In this task, the shooter begins with a magazine with 9 rounds loaded in the pistol and a second magazine with 9 rounds in the magazine pouch. The shooter will be given the grip command. At the sound of the timer, the shooter has 60 seconds to get 14 hits anywhere on the target. Obviously, I'm going to be shooting 18 shots. 14 of those have to be somewhere on the target. And this task, again, doesn't differentiate between white, gray, and black. Just anywhere on the target counts. So I'm going to get things set up and ready to go. And in just a minute, we'll see how things go on this 10th and final task. And folks, just to eliminate the possibility for any confusion this time around, I did cover up that one shot in the gray and one shot in the black that I fired in the last stage. That was 24.86 seconds, folks. I don't think I'm going to wait for the beep. And there's the final 18 shots, folks. They're all on the target as required by the accuracy standard. Most of them are in the white. I had a few go low and to the left on me here, but they did all meet the accuracy standard for that stage. And here's a final look at the target, folks. All 50 shots met the respective accuracy standards for each task. They were all fired within the proper time limits. So I believe this represents a qualifying score on this California handgun qualification course. Now this course had a lot of things going on, and it really had a different feel from most of the other courses that I've shot up to this point, and I'm approaching half of the states in the country. Most of the things we've seen in other courses, but a lot of them just had a little bit different feel, or they were approached a little bit differently. So it will be interesting to see when I sit down and look at how many of my list of critical skills are contained in this particular course. I think there are going to be quite a few of them. So when I get to my semi-final video and plug this in against all the others in this group of 10 states, California may well be one of the front runners. And how about our challenger today, folks? Let's hear it for my old duty pistol. It didn't let me down, and I didn't expect it would. For the 7 years that I carried this pistol, it was extremely reliable. I never had a problem with it. It put bullets right where I aimed them. Now sometimes if my aim was off a little bit, that was my fault, but it definitely put the bullets where I aimed them. This has been an extremely good pistol. It was originally purchased by my former department in 2007, and I'm fortunate to still have it today because I was able to purchase it a couple of years ago when they traded these pistols on brand new M&Ps. One quick thing, folks, I'm asked from time to time if I practice these courses before I make the video, and the answer is no. What you see in the video is my first live fire attempt at these various stages. Now sometimes I'll dry fire them a few times to try to get a feel for the time limits or just to get a feel for the stage, but I don't do any live fire until the cameras are rolling, so what you see is my first attempt as I make my way through these courses. By the way, am I the only one that looks at this target and sees the Black Knight? And that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you order anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off anything you purchase from Optics Planet. See you next time, folks. But until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.